see the Lovecraft, they dish the facts. Lightsabers clash and case on their backs. Xenomorphs lurking, Gotham's dark alleys. With every episode, the fandom rallies. The first to last, the Nerdom with Mike and Tom. Dropping nerd knowledge like an atom bomb. Discussing the cosmic, the scary, the epic. Tune in, strap in, it's all real, authentic. Galaxies far, far, horrors, chilling lore. From Krypton to Hogwarts, always explore. Panels and pages, heroes and stages. Worlds colliding, they know all the phases. Wicked X-Wings and Del X that scream. Phantom zones and vampire dreams. Multiverse open and ready to storm. Mike and Tom in the lab, setting the norm.
Welcome to the First, the Last, the Nerdom, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of film, comics, and beyond. This week, we remember and pay tribute to David Lynch, a painter, a carpenter, a filmmaker, and above all else, an artist. His vision have left an indelible mark on the world of cinema, and this week we look at one of his best, 1997's The Lost Highway. This neo-noir nightmare takes us on twisted journeys through identity, time, and perception. So buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride. Let's get going. All right. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Tom. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
As you could probably tell, David Lynch is probably big in my life with the let me get this right. The Twin Peaks poster, a piece of art that I have. Yeah, it was one of the David Lynch and Twin Peaks was like one of the things that kind of exploded my mind as far as what art could do. The very first was Star Wars, but so I have the two big most influential things over my shoulders here. But enough about me. What was David Lynch's influence on you?
Yeah, so I came to him kind of later in my adult life, I would say. Sorry, I gotta get this stupid thing out of my face. Sorry, it's just distracting me. Anyway, I came to appreciate him at much longer or earlier in my adult life. I remember I had never watched Twin Peaks. I watched that at the time, and it blew me away. I couldn't believe that I missed out on it. And then that kind of whetted my appetite for all things that are David Lynch. Because back then, if you don't know anything about him, you kind of watch like say Twin Peaks, and then you'll watch a completely different movie, and it'll be a completely different situation. I mean, just the whole thing. Similar kind of type feel after you've seen a few, but you kind of get you get a very good sense of whether you like this type thing or not. And I'm happy to say that, I mean, from a lot of other films that led me into that's mine. And I know you have a much deeper appreciation and just level of knowledge because I think you got to experience some of these when they actually came out, and you got to interact with them. So I'm kind of jealous of that. So I did not find David Lynch until many years later, well into my in my early 20s.
I think Twin Peaks is probably like the starter drug for most people kind of getting into David Lynch. Sort of like one of the things that's more accessible as far as kind of getting into his world. You don't want to dive deep. Maybe don't want to start with Eraserhead. You might want to build yourself up to that. And it's sort of kind of the way we've been kind of handling on our channel. We talked about Wild at Heart to start with, and that was another collaboration he did with Barry Gifford, and we're talking about Lost Highway, which he actually wrote with Barry Gifford. But before we get deep into into David Lynch and Lost Highway, well, let's talk about our channel a little bit, so in case you're not aware of, if you're just kind of starting out with us. We are the First, Last, and Nerdom, although we're kind of phasing it over to First, Last, Nerdom. We got several different videos. We cover all things under the nerd umbrella. We talk about horror, sci-fi, fantasy, as films or comic books. We get into the superhero thing. But we've got quite a large back catalog of videos covering everything. So you might want to kind of dive through. We even touch on film noir a little bit, which definitely there's film noir elements to Lost Highway.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. That I would absolutely say, yeah, yeah, absolutely. We love to see you. Thank you so much to the. We have a positive a trend. Our trends are tend to be very small in nature, very humble. We're nonetheless grateful for that. So the last two people who decided to subscribe to our channel, we thank you very much. We look forward to interacting with you and hearing from you guys out there. If you have a opinion one way or another, good or bad, or we're just trying to find good things. I like to call our stuff a recommendation engine, so to speak. But I think you also are our czar of other social media, Mr. Tom. Aren't you?
Yeah, I also have do our Reddit channel, which we don't have a subreddit yet, but poke up on various subreddits to promote our stuff. Sometimes we get a nice response, sometimes we don't. I think I went on the Warriors subreddit, and they and also I think on Arrows as well, and got a decent coverage on that. I'm also on X. Yeah, promote our stuff on X, and anytime something tickles my fancy, I'll post about it. But mostly it's just promoting our channel on there. So follow us if you want to keep up to date on what videos are coming out.
Absolutely, yeah. I too am also on X. If you join me and Tom, if do our thing, have a longer form conversation if you like on X, as it were. Also available on ApeIt.Ink. That's my little home publication. Just a little bit of things that are interest me or whatever. But more importantly, like Tom said, we have that YouTube presence, and we have quite a few really great last ones that we did. The Warriors. Oh,
Hmm.
did I made that mistake again? Yep. I was wondering why I did that. Anyway, Nosferatu, there,
Hmm.
etc. But kind of reeling it in here. You had we kind of talked after something after he passed away. Just
Hmm.
about 12 days ago.
Yeah.
And it was a surprise shock to
Hmm.
everyone.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of let you go there and say, like, we had a little bit of a delay last week. Had some other
Hmm.
things going on, but we had to push off the show, which we'll get back into as we get into the flow. But this happened, and I asked Tom, we got to do something to pivot over and
Yeah.
pull Lynch in and give uh, try to do our best to
Yeah,
cover
give him his due, and in the
absolutely
way that we can. Yeah,
mastery and respect. Yeah, absolutely.
it kind of somewhat came out of nowhere, but also I knew he was dealing with emphysema, and it got to the point where he wasn't probably going to be able to film anymore. So I knew he was not in the best condition. So it wasn't a complete surprise, but yeah, it's still pretty shocking. And yeah, no, the weird thing was, in the thing I love about David Lynch is he kind of gives you kind of brought the magic of the world to you. A lot of times things kind of feel mundane and not quite magical anymore. And watching one of his films, or just he listen to him talk in an interview, a lot of times you'll step away, kind of looking at the world differently. And I think that's part of his magic. And there's the day he died. In fact, I work overnight, and one of my calls in the morning before um, I quit for the day, this man came on the phone. I was helping him with an issue, and he sounded just like David Lynch. Obviously it's a coincidence, but there's kind of magic in those coincidences. And the way he talked, and also the way he sounded just like David Lynch. Is almost like David Lynch's spirit kind of went through this guy or something. I don't know. It
Right.
just and he was very enthusiastic about me helping him, and it was just a fun conversation. And I left that with this kind of warm, kind of beautiful feeling afterwards. And it's almost like David Lynch had touched me through the man. And then
Yeah.
I went to bed, and then I woke up and found out he had passed away, which was crazy. But obviously it's a coincidence. But like I said, there's there's magic with coincidences, I think.
I agree. I agree with you on that statement. There's just some weird things, and that's why they're coincidences. Sometimes some people ascribe to, what do they call that? I can't think of it,
Uh,
but
Synchronicity or
yeah,
kismet or
synchronicity or timing, that the
Mhm,
providence, that kind of thing. Just kind of things are
mhm,
just in the right places, right, or maybe they're at the wrong time,
mhm,
right place, but you still pay attention. It's kind of fun. But yeah, I was
mhm,
gonna say, he is just so good at and excels at that psychological adventure that you are
mhm,
dropped into, that makes you question, that makes you
mhm,
I love him because I also, in every interview that I've seen, the more profound ones, I suppose, would be like ones like where he naturally poses. He's a very natural question crafter, I would say. And I really enjoy that from that aspect of him, but also, being able to take a trip through the psyche sphere, that kind of thing. Very well known for that.
mhm,
He
mhm.
probably is probably one of um, the best artist
Yeah,
in raw talent to
he's
do that.
yeah,
But
he's
but
very yeah, he's very accepting to the mysteries of life.
right,
They don't always have to have answers, but he loves to explore the mystery of it.
he,
And he would
yeah.
see common things like he was at a gas station one time, and he saw, I think, 4 or 5 different stuffed Woody Woodpeckers, and he decided he said he had to liberate those guys, get them out of there. And so there you can see like old pictures of him sitting among his various Woody Woodpeckers. And he's just he had the he again, he was able to inspire the magic within the moment. And a lot of his movies, I'm not the first to say it, but his stuff is almost like a filmed dreams or nightmares. He's
Hmm.
able to give that dream logic that makes sense to he was able to convey, a lot of times if someone tries to explain a dream to you, it loses its magic. There's not a magic, but David Lynch was able to translate dreams into film and not lose the magic.
Absolutely, yeah. I was trying to find his website here. Sorry, but yeah.
Yeah.
Apologize.
But
Okay.
yeah, so we're going to talk about we'll get back to maybe talk touching upon David Lynch at the end there, but we are going to
Absolutely.
talk about Lost Highway, which came out in 1997, and it came out quite a few years after his last movie, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. And Fire Walk with Me was both a box office and a critical bomb. People just didn't understand it. I at the time I absolutely loved it. Actually, I think the group of people I saw the film with in the theater, it was one of the first times in a movie where when the screen, when the movie stopped and the credits rolled, everybody in the film in the theater stayed in their seats and actually stayed and discussed the movie together. It was
Really?
kind of like this
That's
magic
cool.
moment of
That's
that hardly ever happens. But yeah, and that was just amazing to me. But again, wasn't a big hit. So he kind of had trouble kind of finding funding and find his next movie. He did almost make, or he tried to make a movie called The Dream of the Bovine,
hmm
which was kind of an absurdist comedy. You would think that after Fire Walk with Me, he had a kind of edge on his shoulder, something to prove, or maybe he was angry, and that's why Lost Highway is kind of a dark kind of journey. But in fact, his before that, he was trying to make an absurdist comedy that was co-wrote with Robert Ingalls, which was one of the writers on Twin Peaks, and it was the story of these cows that became human, and we're trying to figure out, what how to human, so to speak, and
Right.
just have a crazy kind of comedy. And and he actually tried to get well, Harry Dean Stanton was on par to go into that movie, and they wanted to get Marlon Brando to be one of one of the guys in the movie, and they went in for interview with him, and Marlon Brando called it pretentious bullshit, so he didn't want to do it. But
That's funny.
yeah, there's some fun stories that David Lynch tells about his experience with Marlon Brando. At that
Yeah,
point, he said didn't really give a shit about anything. He was just doing his thing.
I've heard that Marlon Brando in his later half of his life, he just did not give two Fs, or he didn't give it a care. I also saw a Superman interview where Christopher Reeves kind of said, how he really felt about Marlon Brando. Nothing. He was just like he just didn't. It was a paycheck for him for that
Yeah, absolutely.
particular
Yeah.
I was fell into a history, but yeah, tying it back to David Lynch. He is a great surrealist, and he was one of the rare people that could not compromise on what his vision was, but develop it as he wanted to, but also find commercial success. Not to the point, but at
Mhm,
different points, he was being considered for. George Lucas was talking to him. He had the world by as he wanted it. So he could pick and choose where he wanted to go. And how he laid
mhm,
this out, it is. I'm glad you gave that history. That it's a little bit darker, and it does show, but I think it also it definitely is the typical or the way that David Lynch walks into the subconscious with with this movie, or not, depending upon where you come in or end here. Then that's the beautiful thing, is that it's their discussion pieces, because at the end
mhm,
sometimes the film itself provokes so many more questions. That's why I said he's a great crafter of questions, and
mhm.
to encourage that what you just pointed out. That's really cool. That I wish I could have seen it in real time. Of course, I was a kid, so I would.
Yeah,
But in any case,
yeah,
yeah, I'm
yeah,
glad you
yeah.
picked
It's
this one to
yeah,
focus on, and you had
absolutely.
such great acting too. I mean, we're hardly breaking into the topic here, but I'll hand it back to you and say I agree. That this
Yeah,
is a great choice,
yeah,
that
yeah,
takes
yeah, and
his mode and then invites you in.
absolutely. Yeah, and I had the let's see, Floyd. I had the Criterion version of Lost Highway, and yeah, and it's out at 4K. Um, I tried to watch it again. At the time, I just had like a crappy Blu-ray of it, and I started watching it. And it just didn't look right. It wasn't to my quality of a Lynch movie, and so I put it aside, and I'd only watched like a few minutes of it. So when I put the 4K in, again, I hadn't seen it in forever, and it was such a beautiful transfer. I know in the past few videos I've been remiss to talk about the quality of the 4Ks I've been watching,
Hmm.
but it really impressed me of the quality of that 4K. It's so sharp and beautiful. The way David Lynch kind of frames the image is just kind of magical, and yeah, it's a wonderful a wonderful thing. But yeah, the David Lynch. He came to Barry Gifford and said, "Hey, we need to make a movie." And Gifford said, "Oh no, I'm writing something right now, David." And he goes, "No, no, Barry, we got to do this. We're coming over." And so David had an idea, Barry had an idea. They didn't like either one of those. But David Lynch, he said that when he wrapped Lost Fire Walk with Me, he had an idea, a kind of a germ of an idea of a videotape showing up at this man and woman's house,
Right.
and it was a film of within inside their house. and it just felt like kind of a creepy kind of nightmare story. And he said that also the things that were percolating in his mind, he was very obsessed with the O.J. Simpson's murders. The trial of O.J. Simpson, and whether or not he killed you know uh his wife and her her boyfriend. And how was who's how can someone do those murders and then be on the golf course a couple days later.
Right.
And he also had been at his house. Someone had rung his doorbell, and the he said, Dick Laurent is dead. And, David, like, "What?" And so he ran to the window to see who it was, and he didn't see anybody. And he decided, he figured that maybe it was for another neighbor, but he never asked, because, you gotta have that mystery there, you know? But those ideas kind of intrigued Barry and him, and they got to work on the script of Lost Highway. There's Barry said that, usually when you write something with someone, you got the guy on the typewriter or the computer,
Right.
and the other guy's kind of pacing around with ideas, And he said both him and Lynch are both pacers. They're not the guys to sit down to write it. And he said they kept running into each other, so they kind of had to sit across from each other, and he had a kind of a pad paper and would write down the ideas as him and Lynch came across these. So you as always, Lynch is unique in everything he does. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. This is this sets out it right off the bat. It doesn't take too long to see that it is from this perspective of Bill Pullman at first, and you see that he is this. You see that he's a complex guy. You see that he's probably not very happy. He's something's going on. Something. Whether you want to project sadness on upon him, or confusion, or
Mhm,
I don't know, a crisis of some kind. Either way,
mhm,
you were met with this very strange fellow, in even stranger circumstances, that finds himself
mhm.
in this thing, and
Yeah.
it only gets more. It only pulls you in more on the mystery side, and you could absolutely
Mhm,
very, very lazily slap a noir label on this film, and it works just fine.
mhm,
Although it's a little bit, a little bit more, um, I don't know how to. Well, I don't want to. Well, we'll get into that part. But I love how his film. You take this from the opening scene of the highway, obviously the metaphor, the title,
Yep.
and then you're very slowly getting spun up. But like once you get in there, boy, it doesn't take long before you are met with what is going on.
Yeah, and you mentioned the beginning opening of the movie, and that hits hard right now because you have the magic of David Bowie's song "I'm Deranged,"
Yes,
and you have the visuals
great,
of David
great
Lynch,
points.
two two giants that are no longer with us. And it's just pure magic. It just kind of sucks you in. And David had heard that album, I think a year before the movie, and he said that kind of triggered what how he figured the movie would start. And so, obviously him and Bowie were friends, so I'm sure it was easy to get that song in the movie. But yeah, it's almost like the song wasn't written for the movie, but it was made for the movie. It just fits. It just absolutely fits. And yeah, you're right. The beginning of the movie, Bill Pullman plays Fred, and there's like this very intense feeling of paranoia and suspicion in his life. Maybe his wife is cheating on him, maybe not. It's very um it feels dreamlike, but also very real.
Hmm.
That sense of dread and that sense of, you know there's this weight that's on his shoulder that just kind of weighing him down. It's very palpable, and kind of, we've all had those moments where things seem really dark for you, and this captures that feeling of being in the world, but being maybe a step or two outside the world as well, and kind of being kind of lost within yourself.
Right,
There's
right.
there's that that
You know I mean, not to put a be so obvious, but you literally are lost, but you're still on a highway, and you still are required to go
Mhm,
forward on this road. You don't know what the
mhm,
hell that means, or where you're orientated at. You're absolutely right. We've all had those moments in life, and I love that. I love that about this film. And also the from one scene to the next, you had you have just more questions that come up. Like
mhm,
when you listen to it, like you're not just dropping in on a singular event. You are dropping in on a series of events, for whether you want to
mhm,
slice and dice this by, main character, and how troubled he is,
mhm.
or how he's just something's going on there, and it's eating away at him,
Yeah.
or whatever. I don't want to project too much, but you
Mhm.
find out, like you were saying, that there is just something ain't right, but you're left with the impression of something happened or is gonna happen. You're not quite clear on that, to be honest.
Mhm.
And there's different takes on that, and we'll get into that. That's a little bit more
Yep.
nuanced.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and,
uh,
a little bit later, we'll kinda dive into what we think the movie's about. I have some strong feelings on, my feelings on what the movie's about, but the fun thing about Lynch's movie is you can put in as much participation as you want. You could be an active participant, try to figure out what David Lynch is trying to tell you. It's a kind of fun kind of game of, okay, what does this actually mean? Or you could be as very laid back and just enjoy the weirdness of it all. And there's some people that don't try to figure out, that just enjoy the overall kind of craziness of a Lynch movie. There's that. And you mentioned Lost Highway, which David Lynch got that phrase from, or those wordings from Barry Gifford's book, Night People.
hmm,
There's like a line about the Lost Highway in that book, and he just fell in love with that, and that kind of inspired the movie as well. But yeah, it's very very personal movie as well. I mean, there's so much emotion in there that's very very real, and I think with it being kind of kind of he doesn't pin things down. He doesn't, like, okay, he doesn't explain away the mystery of things. He there's the sense in a lot of movies where there's that moment where you kind of info dump about, okay, well, this is what's going on, this is everything. In a Lynch movie, you never had that moment where you're caught up to speed. It's like you either kind of pick up and run with it, or you're going to be left behind.
no, absolutely. Well, you are. This isn't a baby movie. This is you are a fully formed adult, and there are excellent. The acting from everyone is, somehow David Lynch. Also, not as well spoken about, but he has a good working relationship with his actors. I think mostly. I think that's mostly
Mm,
true. And when you have that bond, that trust, you can pull out more from the actor, or kind of push pull, give them more, give them whatever it takes to kind of get to that scene, and, and,
mhm,
and really nail it down. And that's so true as you go through each one of the I don't know how to put it, but like a
mhm.
carousel, kind of like
Yeah,
from the inside, you're kind of spinning around. Um, you're kind of
yeah.
spinning around the same core points, and you're just seeing this story kind of. It's the same story. It's just from a different weird, aspect that you might not normally associate with that. And that goes into how he can do non-linear, narration, and craft a story, like where the what I always love where the atmosphere almost becomes a character and is so important to that, where each scene sets and it's part of that ambiance, where it's the lighting or the whatever that maybe, or the
Mhm.
practical effects, whatever that is, to make those scenes happen. Or it's, and this is the beauty, is it's literally just shots of this, you're in the same apartment or you're in the same house, whatever you want to call it, the same home or the same cell or whatever, and you revisit these things that are supposed to be very mundane and boring, and all of a sudden,
Mhm.
I'm not spoiling anything, but there's a scene pretty early on, like in the prison, where one of the guards kind of does his checks and he goes, something isn't right, and it changes before reality. Like, this is why it confuses you with, like, are we, where are we in dream? Are we in somebody's alternative
Mhm.
reality? Whatever it is, but that guard kind
Mhm.
of goes, "This is pretty spooky," or something like that. I remember him saying, and that kind of stuck with me. And this movie,
Yeah.
that's pretty true in every other scene of this movie, like where you just can't help but keep watching. And
Yeah.
that's also that natural curiosity. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you kind of brought up acting. It's so which is one of the tools. David Lynch is very much a painter. One of those things is when people try to, ask him what a movie's about, he goes, "You don't go up to a painter and say, 'Well, what does this painting mean?'" You're, at least you're not supposed to. You're supposed to feel. You got to look into it and kind of feel and kind of have a game with the painter, try to see what they're seeing, what they're trying to say, but also what you're putting into it yourself. And that kind of changes the meaning for you, but there's also the meaning that the artist was portraying as well. And I think he kind of translates that with this movie. Almost every scene is almost a painting in and of itself. It's well constructed. The acting is just part of that. The house that Fred and Renee have was actually, he had bought a third house to be a studio, a music studio, for himself, and they hadn't quite got it set up as a studio yet, and they were having trouble finding a house for Fred, for the uh, beginning of the movie, and they decided, okay, well, we'll use this house because we can make it into what we want it to be. So
Hmm.
they constructed the house to their specifications, because there's that scene where the beginning where they ring the bell, someone rings the bell and says, Dick Laurent is dead, and he needed where, when Pullman goes to the window to look out, he wanted it to be where you couldn't see the front porch, you couldn't see who maybe was there saying that. And so they actually constructed, made the house with the windows, and and during that time between Fire Walk with Me and this movie, he was constructing and making all this furniture, and he all of that furniture for the most part in that house was constructed by David Lynch. So it's almost,
It,
he as a painter, as an artist, he was constructing and putting together the whole scene, and he had control over everything, and it just works. I mean, it's just an
well,
amazing, especially that first part of it where they're kind of trapped in that house.
mhm,
It's very much kind of a controlled, but it also feels very fluid as well. I mean,
right.
he has an ability, and I think he likes hiring actors that aren't actors, just regular people, because like you said, he gets a performance out of them that he needs, and it's not like he's telling them, okay, you got to do this, you got to do that, you have to
Mm,
say it like this. He's not that kind of a director. He kind of works with them, and he knows that they like to play as well, and they like to create. So he just kind of guides them, but they're the ones that deliver the performance. And there's a story, and then I also recommend this book, Room to Dream. It's biography slash autobiography
Oh,
of David
hold
Lynch.
on, Tom. Go ahead and
There's
put that up again.
we'll talk about it. Yeah, there's this. It's the biographer is Kristine McKenna, and the book is broken up into chapters of different periods of his life. And Rebecca, she does, or Kristine, I don't know why I keep calling her Rebecca, but Kristine, she writes sort of the biography, the interviews that she did with people. And then David Lynch also does the second half of the chapter is him writing his his memories of what happened. So it's kind of an interesting biography, both biography and autobiography. I also recommend, if you're getting this book, which is absolutely a definite recommend, but if you're at all interested in David Lynch, but also get the audio book as well, because he David Lynch did not want to read what he wrote.
Sure.
So he said, I can't do it. I can't do an audio book. So they said, okay, well, just talk about those experiences. You don't have to say it word for word, just talk about it. So he tells some completely different stories on the audio book as opposed to the book. So if you want to get the whole David Lynch, you have to get
Right.
both.
Right.
But yeah, so which I reread the chapter that they dealt with Lost Highway for this podcast that we're doing. But also the wonderful thing about this 4K is they took that chapter and put it on here, so you could actually
Oh,
listen
that's
to it
really
as
cool.
well. So
Yeah.
that's also awesome. But one of the things that Kristine actually talked about was Balazar Getty.
Hmm.
When he was making Lost Highway, there's a scene where he's listening to his parents. They got him set down, and they're talking to him about the night that this weird thing happens to him, and he's supposed to, for the most part, kind of sit there and just listen to him, and he just wasn't kind of getting what David Lynch wanted, and they did like 17 takes, and David said, let's kind of shut down for lunch. We'll come back and we're gonna get it. And he says that he went to his trailer, was kind of really shook up and was kind of down on himself for not getting what Lynch wanted.
Mm.
And in the meantime, Lynch had wrote down some sort of like little phrases, like he wrote down, what would a child face be like for the first time they see fire, and just kind of random sort of emotional things that just kind of get you in the mindset of it. And they came back from lunch and they got it in one take because those kind of sort of inspirational words just that David Lynch gave him just gave him the right thing that David Lynch wanted. And with his directing, a lot of times it's just he'll say like just a word to an actor and they'll get what he means.
Right. I look forward to talking more about Patricia Arquette's dual performance, the way that she embodied both Renee and Alice. And it's not just two different characters; it's two different realities colliding. And it's like she's playing two sides of this. She's not just playing two sides of the same coin. She's playing in two entirely different currencies in different economies of reality. Like,
Yeah, and yeah, and she said, "Okay, David, I'm playing two different people, right?" And he goes, "No, you're just playing one person."
right, right,
So she's
which,
like, "But I'm playing two." No, no, you're playing the same person.
right, which perfectly is layered on top of like where you start with Bill Pullman and then you get to
Mhm,
Getty, and then you go there. Like it's something that I don't think was done very well before it. Maybe in unique kind of things, but David Lynch has a way of, like you mentioned, like you highlighted, reaching
mhm,
actors and pulling out their best, or helping them understand that, and that's
mhm,
what sets this whole thing up, and it works perfectly. So
mhm.
anyway, I wanted to nerd out about Patricia Arquette because it's like it really
Oh
is.
yeah.
And that kind of also is kind of going on top of like a different altered take of the femme fatale in a noir mystery, whatever you want,
Yeah.
like that kind of that set piece where she's unique,
Yeah.
a unique force in and of the of its its own in the world anyway. But I
Right.
just had to mention that. Sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah, she's sort of like the classic femme fatale, but that mystery woman. But the I think in this movie,
Very
that
stylized
that
like that.
type of archetype is kind of played with a lot because you are very sympathetic to her character at different points, and maybe even more so to her than in fact Fred or Pete. You know, Pete's more relatable than Fred, but yeah, there's this sense of you don't really know them either. You're on the ride with them, but you really aren't really completely in their head. You kind of understand what they're going through. But yeah, there's a wonderful sense of mystery through the whole movie, and even if you think you've got it all figured out, there's always these little stray kind of strands that
Hmm.
kind of make you go back and say, well, maybe I don't completely understand it, or maybe there's another thing that's going on here.
Well, that's why that I say noir, but I also kind of back off of it a little bit too because it could be a completely different movie if you set it up with just a few different sentences and then show it to somebody. But
Mm-hmm.
speaking of the noir, though, he did collaborate with Peter Deming, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that the way that he used shadows in Fred's house
Mm-hmm.
was, very noir like. I don't know about you, but like I
Oh
got
yeah.
that throughout
Yeah.
the thing, which is just it just goes to speak of how many things he can touch, and remind you of what
Mhm.
that is. But you could be sold a bill of something completely else. Like you could easily call this a thriller or whatever
Mhm.
you want to call it. Kind of like that.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, I think, in, on the first page of the script, he said was the 20th century, um, film noir horror or something like that. But
Hmm.
he said that, yeah, he liked to, play with different genres. He said, he was fascinated with horror, with thriller, with film noir, and
Hmm.
why not kind of mix all of that together?
Glamorous.
I've always said that, Fire Walk with Me, Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me was one of my favorite horror movies of all time. It just, there's that in this movie as well, has that horrific element to it. Very much a horror movie, but also a mystery thriller, but also a film noir. It has but it's always engaging, always fascinating, and you really have kind of like a emotional reaction to the movie,
Right.
because it pulls you in. He plays with you. He's like, okay, help me figure out this mystery, and then, like I said, your level of involvement in the movie, as far as trying to figure out, the more you're into the movie and trying to figure it out, the more emotionally invested you are in this. And with any great piece of art, whether it be music or a painting or a poem or a movie, it really, at least during the time that you're with that piece of art, it actually changes you. It moves you. It makes you feel something. And you kind of, there's a lot of times when you're dealing with movies, it's a quick in and out. It's a quick feeling. Maybe you're a little
Transactional.
thrilled, or it's comedy. You're having
Right.
a laugh, but this movie's a little bit more deeper than that. It asks you to be a little bit more deeper with it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. It has the right elements of noir to kind of remind you of that, but you're constantly
Hmm.
engaged, and you're not left to be comfortable either. It's not a lazy ride. It's not like where you just
No.
kind of like where it's just like a Marvel. And apologies if anybody finds it insulting, but take it to the latest Marvel movie or whatever. You kind of just sit there and
Mhm.
kind of go with it, or action movie. Insert whatever little simpler genre you want in place of this. But this introduces you to concepts that you would even think were there, or to even question, like where you're taking the main character and he's in this, like I mentioned before, he's in this agitated, troubled, his soul is not at peace, something is going on, whatever you want to call it, his center is out of whack, and you could call
Mhm.
it motivated forgetting, or whatever you want to call from that. I love that. If you just use simple terms and kind of like let it grow from there and see where it goes and see how like versus like Christopher Nolan, like when he started to do that, more, he started to turn genres, right? He wasn't just this or that, but David Lynch was always kind of like, he was always going to do a David Lynch movie, no matter what he did. So in another reality or another timeline, whatever the kids want to call it, in the multiverse, whatever it is, somewhere out there in the wider universe, maybe there is a David Lynch version of Star Wars, Empire or Return, or I think it was Return. That it was around that time. But anyway, it was
Yeah.
just very interesting.
Yeah.
And that's just the beauty. That's the beautiful part, is because when David Lynch invites you in, you can't help but go in. Like whether it's a
Yeah.
character that you see on the screen, or he's using, at the time he was using modern technology, modern common domestic, very bland technology into an instrument or tool of horror, essentially, like with the videotape and this strange thing, and I love how he uses the characters to reinforce that, like kind of going back to that opening scene, like when they
Yeah.
get the first videotape. And I'm not giving any spoilers away at all, because we're still kind of talking about general concepts here in the first part, so we'll give warning if we do or don't. Well, I don't know how Tom feels about it, but we'll let that play out.
Yeah.
But like you kind of get in, and their first guess is that, oh, it's just a realtor, and you're kind of like, I can see that. Yeah, let's go with that. And you're just as dumbfounded as the characters are at some points too, because he invites you into that kind of that innocent space, and then you kind of see what happens from it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know what you. That was a
Yeah.
long riff, but couldn't help
Oh yeah.
but comment.
Yeah, and I talked about how he kind of constructs the movie, and he has but he's also very happy with happy accidents or the little things that happen on the set. He works with them. There's a deleted scene where there's the Pete character goes to sort of like this 50s style diner, and there is kind of an outside shot, but it was raining, and that was the only day they could film that. And the guy, the one of the producers, he said, well, David, we probably need to move this inside, shoot it inside. And David said, no, we're not doing that. And so he goes, give me a couple of hoses and two good looking guys and two good looking gals. We're gonna film outside. And so he had in the background these two guys with the water hoses spraying water everywhere.
Right.
So that kind of explained the water, explained away the rain, and it worked. In another scene, which is in the film, there's a meeting in a shack. Again, we'll probably get into spoilers a little later, but there's a shack, a very meaningful shack, and they were they filmed their shot, and David said, okay, we built the shack, what's going to happen to it? And the production person goes, we're going to take it down, we're just going to deconstruct it tomorrow. And he goes, can we blow it up? And then to go, maybe, I don't know. And so, okay, we need to blow this up. And so he arranged for that shack to be blown up, and I couldn't imagine the movie without it being blown up. That's sort of like a key moment within that movie,
Right.
with it being blown up. And you would think that he had that in his mind from the very beginning. But again, that's another
Well,
happy little thing that just kind of happened along the way.
Well, kind of to parrot what Bill Pullman, what Fred said, uh, you know, he was asked, well, what do you mean by that? How you like to remember things or whatever,
Yeah, that's a
and that
very
that
key scene. That's a
that's
very
like
key
kind of
piece of
like a very
dialogue.
good signpost here, that maybe time, because when you see that explosion, you're seeing it happen, but then you're again, time is yet another character in this, like many, just like the music is a
Mhm.
character, just like the house is a character, just like the atmosphere. All these components or pieces whether you want to call them a character or not or whatever, or a scene. Well, they help set the scene anyway. Anyway, I just
Hmm.
it just it's beautifully done how he does that, but yet you're still you're in some kind of a time warp or something, you know. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Which we haven't even got into. Like, there's just so much to touch on. I did want
Yeah.
to ask you though, to kind of pull out a little bit. Um, what does this movie have to do with Mulholland Drive and Inland Empire, that you're aware of, at large, to kind of anchor this into the pantheon of Lynch
Uh,
films?
I know that Lynch, well, a lot of people kind of, I probably put those in like a trilogy, but basically like that's sort of, they're all filmed in Hollywood,
Hmm.
so it has sort of, I guess it's his Hollywood trilogy, I guess, or at least, you know, California trilogy. Mulholland Drive was a failed ABC uh TV series pilot that didn't go anywhere, and he
Hmm.
turned it into this fantastical movie.
A great movie.
Yeah.
No, I just was curious
And
because, like,
Inland Empire is sort of like a very minimalist, sort of him kind of guerrilla filmmaking, sort of him just making a movie because he wanted to make a movie. And yeah, I my plan for the channel is to eventually hopefully talk about all of Lynch's movies. And also, you know, if there's interest, I would love to, you know, we did do a series where we went through and watched the first season of Star Trek,
hmm.
The Next Generation. I would love to do that with Twin Peaks
Oh
at
my
one point.
god.
I would call it,
I
I wanted to call the series Lost in the Peaks or something like that.
Yep, yep.
But
No, no. Well, we've kind of touched on that too. Is and this is year 4 for us doing this thing, like where we didn't
Mhm,
just want to kind of reach out and touch and do the obvious one, like do Star Wars 1 and 2 and 3. You know, like we
mhm,
wanted to be, or excuse me, pardon me. I have to keep my nerd card. Star Wars 4, 5, and 6. Sorry, and then
mhm.
1, 2. We didn't want to go reach for the obvious movies that, you know,
Mhm,
that were out there. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I would love that to. That's probably like the fourth. I don't know, whatever. I'm sure it's like way more for you rewatch of Twin Peaks, but I would
mhm.
love that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
God damn,
there was a time when every year I'd watch Twin Peaks, so I've
I
kind of fallen out of that, but yeah, there's yeah,
no no I
you know, there's people that call themselves, you know, diehard Star Trek fans, diehard Star Wars fans.
right.
I'm a diehard Twin Peaks fan.
Yep.
Yeah, it's tried and true. I think we were called Peakers at one point, but I'm not sure what the nomenclature
Well,
for a diehard Twin Peaks fan is, but
well,
I'm that.
there are legitimate conferences out there, and they may be on the small scale or
Mhm,
whatever you want to, you know, poo poo it at. But there are people
mhm,
that is a steadfast international thing out there, and I love it too because it ties into Lynch, you know, the Lynchverse,
mhm.
as it
Yeah.
were. But I would love to do that. I'd love to do that. But I just wanted to kind of say that, although I should mention, David Lynch never said that this was a California or Los Angeles or Hollywood trilogy. He never said
Mhm,
that. He never let on with that. But he never really poo-pooed people. He never like put his foot down and
mhm.
said
Yeah.
authoritatively, "How dare you?" Like some other directors. And I'm not necessarily saying it. He didn't necessarily care, because the beautiful part of that was, like, people were talking about his work. And the beautiful thing about David Lynch is the more you talk about David Lynch, the more you want to go see his, consume his, from. And the beautiful thing is he's got such a wide library, from Dune to to Twin Peaks, to that this is a man who understood the balance of victory, and understood what nursing a loss meant, so to speak.
Mhm.
But he
Yep.
somehow always came out, and was able to continue doing what he wanted to do, which is amazing. Anyway, sorry,
and
that's a little bit too
he
zoomed out, but
wasn't gonna. He
I'll let you pull us
did it
back
for
in.
the love of doing it. He said that he didn't want to make movies just to make movies. Because he said you would lose interest pretty quickly if you did that. I think he probably would have liked to have made more movies
Sure.
than he did because there was always the question of funding and getting the money to make it. So there was sort of, but he never was he from what he said, when he couldn't make a movie or wasn't inspired to, you do other things. You do his painting. He never stopped painting. He never stopped creating art. He become obsessed with constructing furniture after Fire Walk with Me. He didn't, a lot of, after the failure of Fire Walk with Me, some artists would probably break down and just, wallow in their own pity. But David Lynch, he found an outlet for it. He started constructing furniture. I mean, this guy, he really had a fascination with how things were made, even humans. There was stories of and Fisk talked about how when he lived with him, uh, David made friends with this guy who worked in a morgue, and anytime they had a particularly grisly death there, maybe from a car accident or something, they would invite David over, and he would come and take a look. He would one of the art series that he was kind of obsessed with throughout his life was like dead animals. He
Mm.
had a fascination with putting dead animals in his art. He did a kind of a how to put together like a bird um, thing where he deconstructed a bird and had the all the parts on on a board. But yeah, he's just fascinated with all aspects of life and how everything kind of works together, and it kind of comes together in a weird way with his movies as well. He's able to construct a world that just makes sense,
Well,
because he knows how all the little components line up together
right.
and make it work. And it's not like he's got like this master plan of with
Mhm.
his outline and all these pinpoints. No, it's more or less he goes on feel. Does it feel right? And he
Well,
said, when he's editing, he goes, when the sore thumb scene it comes up because it sticks out.
right. Well, right.
Maybe you don't know at the time, but yeah. And again, he goes, you don't know sometimes where you're going, but when you get there, it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's
indeed.
that's a lot of what this movie is.
Well, Lynn showed us that cinema could be more than just entertainment. It would be a
Mhm.
window into the subconscious to kind of bring it back into the movie, like a mirror reflecting, our fears, our desires, and it just goes to put the exclamation point on this show, and us talking about him, and we'll be talking about him definitely this year to give him special, to celebrate him, but in his influence that resonates well well
Yeah,
into
yeah.
going forward in the future, hopefully.
Yeah,
But
and there's, one of the things that, is kinda sad in this movie is that you have so many great performances in it and such great actors in it, but the main focus is on the core characters. Some of these people you only get to see have a scene or two of them. Like it's a final performance of Richard Pryor.
mhm,
I believe he's only in like one or two scenes in this movie,
right,
but he definitely kind of provides quite a bit of a character to the movie. And it's the final performance of Jack Nance, a longtime collaborator with David Lynch. He's was in every single movie up to that point that David Lynch did, except for Elephant Man.
mhm,
And Jack Nance, if you're a Twin Peaks fan, you know him as Pete Martell, Fish and the Percolator guy. And he's so much more. He's such a wonderful character, but unfortunately, he died not long after filming that movie. He had spent 9 years sober, and his wife had passed away, and he told David, hey, yeah, I'm done. I'm gonna start drinking again. And with Lost Highway, David said he came to the set sober. Every day he was on set, he was sober, but off camera. Unfortunately, he kind of you had a tough turn, and he never was able to turn him. He ended up. I think they found him in his bathtub. His neighbors did. And there might have been some foul play. There might not have. But yeah, it's sad. But you did get those final performances of Richard Pryor and Jack Nance. And then there's a lot of great other. Yeah, I was surprised. I forgot that Gary Busey was in the movie.
Mhm.
He's only in a couple of scenes as well, but gosh darn it, you got Gary Busey in there.
Well, I think that David Lynch was a very uncompromising kind of person as far as it came to authenticity and who people were and accepting them for who they were, and being able to, again, goes back to what I was saying before, uh, that I it's not my original thought at all.
Hmm.
Just being humble here, very common observation that he could pull that from the actors, and their performances. And you mentioned, Gary Busey. You mentioned a lot of folks who are no longer with us, or who, you mentioned at the top of the show, his interview, that this kind of, just the synchronicity or the coincidence, like where you have Robert Blake,
Hmm.
and, just as like one more very human. All these people are human. They're flawed in their
Hmm.
own personal lives, and some can cobble that enough together to make a perform. But anyway, he didn't blink. Just to kind of go back to
Hmm.
performances and what he can get from people, he didn't blink. And that, that very creepy
Hmm.
scene, like where where kind of going back to like what the that prison guard said was, so, this is very spooky.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of, we haven't even dialed really into it, we're going for extra innings anyway, because this is a
Hmm.
special show. So I just want to
Yeah.
put that out there. But
Hmm.
with that being said, like, we haven't even got we got into the movie, and like what our interpretations are. We'll ease into
Hmm.
that maybe here in a little bit. But yeah, just I wish that it has hallmarks that were borrowed from for other. I suspect that it was borrowed, or I'll never know this, but like, you talk about, like, I mentioned Chris Nolan before, and Chris Nolan is not afraid of doing non-linear kind of movies in his own right.
Hmm.
Like with Tenet, the jury is still out on Tenet for people if they like it or don't. The quick shortcut answer would be no. And it's very hard to follow, I suppose. But there could be there. This movie is complicated, and you cannot just watch this movie one time. You have to watch this movie at least three times, and then you might come away with like some how complex the thing that you're
Hmm.
seeing going ahead. Yes, it works on the surface, but if you start pulling apart the things and, like, again,
Hmm.
talking about it, discussing it or
Hmm.
questioning it, you get so many more layers, and I love that
Yep.
anyway. It just goes to
Yeah.
that. I don't know. Well, I don't know
Yeah.
what your thoughts were there.
Yeah, and like I said, Robert Blake, he put he's fantastic in this movie. Yeah, it's David Lynch's idea to have his face painted white, but Robert Blake's the one that suggested shaving off his eyebrows, to give him that extra creep factor. He plays the mystery man, and this movie, there's a mystery on whether or not Fred kills his wife, and then just a few years later, Robert Blake is arrested for maybe killing his wife. So there's there's that interplay. There's, like they said, there's that synchronicity. There's sort of like those happy coincidence or unhappy coincidences that happen within David Lynch's world, that it just just kind of makes sense, whether it be tragic or magical. It's yeah. And Gary Busey. He went on to be a kind of an interesting character as well, but he kind of comes off as kind of cool, interesting guy in this movie. But
Sure.
and then there's one scene with Giovanni Ribisi, which I think he had more scenes as well. But and then as one of the prison guards, you had Henry Rollins, and
Hmm.
as also if you looked a little close there, you might have saw like Marilyn Manson and Twiggy Ramirez, which were both in the Marilyn Manson band at the time. But yeah, it's David Lynch. He had his hand in so many cool things. In music, he knew what at the time what the cool music was. You've got a wonderful soundtrack. I think the soundtrack was did a lot better than the movie did itself. I mean, you had David Bowie, you had Nine Inch Nails, Trent Reznor, who also did a lot of some of the ambient drum noises in this movie. He had a hand in some of that. You know, you had Marilyn Manson's music in this movie. You had
Trent Reznor.
Rammstein. They said that
Industrial. Yeah.
David always had music playing on the set to kind of create the mood for the scene,
Yeah.
for the movie. So it's yeah. At the time, I was into that music,
Oh
and
yeah.
so it was seeing this movie was sort of like a celebration. Like Lynch knows my music. He's he's in my head.
Yeah, you mentioned, all those artists. This guy was a magnet for other creative
Hmm.
types that weren't
Hmm.
just filmmakers, or because some people are more pinned to their network, I suppose, and they only ever talk to filmmakers or whatever. But David Lynch clearly understood multimodal media, if you were to, call him,
Yeah.
because his films weren't, like you mentioned before at the top of the show, whether it's furniture, you know, or silence and noise, how he creates that, kind of like how Hitchcock used light and shadow to set the
Hmm.
scene for him. The audio, that's not very
Hmm.
surprising from him to see that. And the music, like you mentioned before, like there's jazz, there's this
Hmm.
very rough jazz that's very
Yeah, very chaotic, yeah.
very chaotic, very, like, you it
Mhm,
again, it very it's a very good pass through of what the character is going through anyway, or what you
yeah,
suspect is going on anyway. Like there's just this racket that's
right.
going on, and we don't know why, and then you kind of
Yeah,
we you slowly descend into this, whether it's Robert
yeah.
Blake, being the mystery man at the party, or
Mhm,
multiple people being at the same party at the same time. And then if you want to extrapolate that out
mhm,
and say that there's personas, maybe, I don't know if you want to dip into
mhm.
that or not, but
Yeah, 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 and, yeah, the, Twin Peaks is, well known for its music as well, this kinda
yes.
soft, beautiful jazz, music, very ethereal music, and, yeah, in this movie it starts off with obviously the David Bowie song that kind of eases you in, but yeah, when you're fully in the Fred's universe, you have that chaotic, crazy jazz music that he's playing, that's just kind of disrupts your mind, and it's sort of like, okay, this isn't Twin Peaks, sort of like a kind of slapping you in the face, but also, one of the things about Lynch is he has a wonderful sense of humor, and a lot of his movies has a lot of humor in it, and this movie doesn't. There's touches of it, but very little.
Right.
Well, a funny thing outside the movie, after the movie came out, the Siskel and Ebert gave it two thumbs down, and so as a joke, one of the
Loosters.
ads that David Lynch put out was the two thumbs down and the tagline, two more reasons why to see the movie.
Oh, right, right,
so
right.
so
Well,
so there's that.
well, that's the great part about how he is as a person. He was a great communicator, and he understood the medium of communication, because that's what film and art is essentially. So
Hmm.
to him to kind of joust with those guys is awesome. It just kind of goes. That's just who he was.
Hmm.
He was never afraid to have a direct conversation with his fans.
Hmm.
You had mentioned one of when we did the news show or whatever we called it, like where we
Hmm.
had weekly picks for YouTube, and that you
Hmm.
highlighted his YouTube channel where he would just come on and say the time and the temperature, and
Yeah,
give you
what the weather was like, and
whatever. Right, go
his
ahead.
lucky number pick for the day. Yeah, they're all still on his YouTube channel, and
Forever.
you can go back and he started that during the pandemic. Okay, I think we kind of uh poked around, but I think we have time for getting into the meat of it.
Spoiler
Do you want
territory.
me to go first in my kind of walkthrough of what this movie's about?
Yes, sir. Yeah, please do. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
And this is spoiler session, so if you've made it here hour plus, thank you so much for being with us. And Tom's about ready to drop the bomb. Go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, this is my interpretation. Obviously, other people, both David Lynch and Barry Gifford, the writers of this movie, both were kind of shy about explaining away what this movie was about. So again, anybody's interpretation of the movie is their own and is just as valid as mine or anybody else's. But I kind of feel this is almost like a straightforward movie for me. It just kind of makes sense in the sense that okay, Fred is a very troubled man. He's stoked with paranoia and kind of fear that his wife is cheating on him. The first part of the movie kind of plays out very much like reality, almost kind of a heightened version of reality. And there's no love between him and his wife. They try to have sex. He wasn't able to perform, and there's like that close shot of her tapping his shoulder, saying, it's okay, it's okay.
Hmm.
It's almost like a pity, and it's almost like she's softly tapping it, but it feels like a huge weight kind of thudding his shoulder, and so he's got this thing of not being able to perform. There's all this kind of buried stuff in him, and the mystery man. I see him more as sort of a kind of a devil type character, maybe your hidden the uh, devil on your shoulder, so to speak. And there's a scene where he's at a party and he says that he's in his house and to
Hmm.
call him. And there's this really bizarre scene where he calls the house, and Mystery Man, played by Robert Blake, picks up the phone and he has a conversation with him on the phone, but he's also in front of him. And I see that as sort of your house is sort of like who you are. It's sort of like your mind. The house, it can kind of be represent your mind as well. So in the mystery man says, he can only be there unless you invite him, he can't come in. So that evil that he represents uh, was invited by the Fred character, and he's in his mind. He's in his house. So when they go back to the house, he's already there, and you see that one scene where Bill Pullman walks into that dark hallway that goes to who knows where, that dark recesses of the mind, and he invites. And there's a key scene where there's the living room where you see the TV, and you see two shadows walk across it, and I think it's Bill Pullman and the mystery man, the evil spirit within him, are walking across. They're finally together, and you don't really know whether or not he kills his wife. You do see the videotape. I see there, like you said, there's like that line where the detectives ask if they have a video camera,
Hmm.
and Renee says, Fred doesn't like video cameras, and he goes, I like to remember things how not how they were, but how he remembers things. And I think that's his biggest fear is to see reality. The fact that he kills his wife, um, it kind of disrupts his mind and sends him kind of on this psychogenic fugue state. His mind kind of wanders off. And I think the second half of the movie, I know I'm kind of running along here, but I think the
No,
second half
please
of the
go
movie
ahead.
is him trying to go to his happy place. He's trying to rewrite history. He's trying to go back to a younger time when he's younger. And the movie kind of takes on this more uh, kind of a Hollywood kind of fantastical element to it, where everything goes right for the guy. At least at start, Pete. Pete's this guy that everybody likes. Everybody is able to talk to he's able to talk to them, they're able to talk to him. He's got the cool parents. You got Gary Busey in a leather jacket. Who wouldn't want Gary Busey as a dad? And he's got a cool girlfriend, he's got the cool friends, having sex everywhere. You got these detectives kind of watching him going, man, this guy has the life.
Mm,
And there's like this fantasy element, which I believe is him kind of escaping reality, and he's kind of trying to rewrite history, but his crimes are still there for him. The woman that he's obsessed with within life comes and interrupts his beautiful kind of mind, his fantasy. Alice comes in, and maybe he didn't intend for her to be Renee. um you know Alice in Wonderland. She's sort of like this fantastical character, but she brings reality back to him and all his fears, and his paranoia kind of comes back in towards the end of the movie. And his fear of her being promiscuous and everything kind of amps up, and she becomes like this porno star. And
right, right.
his whole world kind of explodes again, and the evil comes back in with the mystery man, and things kind of end up kind of badly for him. And I think the very end of the movie, where he's being chased by the cops,
Hmm.
and then finally he's kind of, he kind of goes crazy look, and all these lightning. I think he's being killed, and he's in the electric chair at that point,
Mm-mm.
and his world is finally ending.
Very fascinating. Yeah, that very cool, very cool. I had kind of had to chart my my thing out. Like, I think I alluded to it a little bit before, like where I said, this is kind of like a carousel, and but you're not on the outside of the carousel, you're on the inside, so you
Hmm.
see everything already distorted anyway, because of course a carousel
Hmm.
would, like, with panels on it, would, with light and
Hmm.
projection on it. I'm speaking about like a projector kind of type thing, and like a slideshow.
Hmm.
You would see outside, you would see the image as normal, but if you're inside in the center, it looks backwards, right? So,
Hmm.
and I think that it takes place from 2 points: the event, something happened, whether you want to call it the murder of his wife, or whether you want to call it the murder of his marriage. Maybe it's a euphemism for cheating, whatever it is, because there's a few points of contact there that you could solidly make. But murder, let's just go with that. Something horrific happened, like where his humanity was absolutely blown away, stripped, period.
Hmm.
He has it
Yep.
as himself was shattered upon that event. And then the
Hmm.
other one that it kind of shifts to is his self, like where he kind of sees things out to be. And whether you want to call, the mystery man his conscious, or
Hmm.
the act, or whatever, I don't know. But I do. I kind of like to take a little looser thing, and then you kind of just see, like, whatever's happening. Time is not straight, as it goes. It
Hmm.
kind of is a little bit, but not really. Not the traditional way that you would have in a story or movie.
Hmm.
But
Yep.
to me, I think it's from that something horrific happened, and it's him kind of basically. It is It's like they say that the Earth and the Moon, at some point, the Earth was like a different shape or something, and the Moon actually was like this massive body that came in and hit the Earth, and then over time it kind of settled.
Mhm.
That's kind of like what this is to me. Like the thing is that like when he is destroyed, um,
Mhm.
and whether he's actually in the electric chair and dying, suffering for his sins, or paying for them, whatever it is, or it's whatever,
Mhm.
he was destroyed the second that impact that happened. And I do
Mhm.
think that I think that kind of leaves it open a little bit for, because I do like to let I like to have the foot in the door a little bit and let the
Mhm.
supernatural in, like where you can kind of
Mhm.
like, I love that. I love entertaining
Yeah.
with Lynch. There it
Mhm.
really isn't there for this movie to per se, like there was
Mhm.
directly for Twin Peaks, like where it's patently obvious
Mhm.
something is
Mhm.
going on outside of this is a show and a tapestry of one man. And I
Mhm.
think that essentially you're seeing all this stuff. Another easier way to put it would be you are seeing, maybe to kind of get a little artsy with it. We'll go with what you said. So he's dying, right? These are literally the
Mhm.
last few chemical interactions in his brain before he's dying.
Mhm.
Is what you
Yeah.
could easily say, like, where, because the cops are always there. They're kind of like
Mhm.
they're always kind of omnipresent with the situation going on, at least as far as and
Mhm.
all these women are going in and out. And the whole
Yeah.
point is that whether it's him or it's not or whatever, you're seeing that he understands that people are seeing and watching him and judging him, and
Mhm.
that judgment, he cannot accept of some kind. To
Mhm.
boil it down even simpler, and you see
Mhm.
this discombobulated state, like where there is
Mhm.
no, the center is over here, it's over there, and this
Mhm.
poor woman is angelicized in a way. Yes, or it is very sexual
Mhm.
in nature. There's still kind of an imagery about it, to like where it's still, um,
Mhm.
I don't know, that there's some kind of innocence there, that it's lost,
Mhm.
whether it's her
Yeah.
or him or whatever. But she
Yeah.
unfortunately is wrapped up
Yeah.
in this washing machine agitation
Mhm.
of chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there's yeah, I like how the beginning of the movie, there's that sense of a nightmare, sort of nightmare reality there. Whereas at least the beginning of the second part of the movie, there's this heightened kind of dreamscape with it. There's kind of a dream lot, if you're dreaming of the perfect thing for you, a lot of this would take place. There's a scene, obviously, there's a key scene where they the Bill Pullman Fred character disappears, and Pete ends up in the prison cell, and they have no idea how he got there. And he comes back home. Gary Busey and his wife brings him home, and there's this a beautiful scene in the backyard where um Pete's kind of in his in the recline in the seat,
Lounge,
sitting down in the backyard, kind of
right,
looking at the sky, and
zoning out.
the picket fences and everything. And there's sort of like a childlike quality to it. He actually goes up to the picket fence to the next door neighbor and sees like the little kiddie pool with the little sailboat. And there's like a return to innocence. And so there's very much a sense of me feeling that it's still Fred and Pete, and he's trying to escape back to a innocent time, to where, he isn't a killer. He's not who, none of us wants to be known as a killer. I'm sure we don't want that, all the bad things that we may have done. I don't think either one of us had gone to the heights of a murder, but there's been some transgressions maybe that we've done that we're not proud of. And we all like to escape back to a nicer time, maybe a childlike time where there's that sense of innocence. And I think he's trying to get there, and he's trying to create kind of this perfect world for himself. but his crimes are still with him, his doubts, his fears, and they have to come back. They kind of come back and they crack things open, and but yeah, but there's I love the dream-like nature of it, and
Well,
there's
the
there was an interview with David Lynch where he was talking about how he was upset with the tailgater, and that's how that scene with Mr. Eddie happened, where he kind of goes off on this guy that's tailgating him. It's sort of like David Lynch's dream, we all have those fantasies of in traffic, I wish I could, give that guy what for, and David Lynch was able to do it within the movie. And in that scene where they kind of run the tailgater off the road, and they kind of smack him around. In the distance, you see the Hollywood sign, and I don't think that was a mistake, or I'm sure that was
not at all.
planned, because Hollywood is the land of dreams, that's the perfect place to set a dream in,
Absolutely.
your dream world. Perfect place. Although, yeah, and I also kind of wonder, you know, there's that sense of, okay, the Bill Pullman Fred character escapes into Pete, but who is Pete exactly? Is he a figment of Fred's imagination? Is Pete real? Is did there's all these kind of questions. Is there sort of a supernatural element to it? Like with the cops,
Right.
you're mainly with Fred and Pete, but you do have this outside perspective of the cops, and that kind of throws a wrench in the idea that it's completely in Pete's head or in Fred's head, because why are the cops? And then there's a kind of a crime scene at the end, where the cops kind of try to put things together, which kind of makes you wonder, okay, is it all in Fred's head? There's like I said, once you think you've got it all figured out, there's all these little strands,
There's a
extra
thread.
strands that kind of
Right.
make you think, okay, well, maybe I don't
Right.
completely understand it.
Well, that's why I love it, because like no matter how I make a pin down, and I kind of purposely made mine loose and lazy a little bit anyway, because as soon as you pin like one, one, there's enough threads there to hold on to like kind of make it unravel. Like you're mentioning, um, this is this actions conquering the man, and because of
Mhm,
what he did, they will forever own him. Instead, it should be the other way around, like that we're all used to in
mhm,
a movie, which is a man conquering the actions. Like he is
mhm,
the master of his own, blah 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 blah, whatever.
mhm,
Hero
mhm,
journey, protagonist, all that, antagonist, all that. But there really is no happy medium here. There is no satisfying clunk of the cell door, happening, unless you interpret, as you did, like that
mhm,
this is the end of something, of somebody who
mhm.
deserves something
Yeah,
very horrific
yeah,
to happen to him. But
yeah, yeah. And there's also that circle around of Fred, in fact, being the guy that goes to his door and says, Dick Laurent is dead. It's sort of like there's like that play with time too. It's
well,
like,
there's that looping
I
nature
also
of right.
wonder if Pete in that world is sort of like him trying to go back to his himself a few years before, and escape into a different person, kind of relive his existence, early on, a few years prior. um but yeah, there's very much a sense of the psychogenic fugue state. David Lynch had kind of found out about that during the making of the movie, and it's almost like sort of a dramatic depiction of it, which a psychogenic fugue state is like this amnesia you get, that some people get, where they forget who they are, but they also wander off and
Right.
become someone different. This is sort of like
Right.
almost a very filmic, kind of fantastical version of that, but that's I'm sure it kind of recreates a lot of the feelings that you might would have if you experience that.
No, absolutely. Well, like that's why I said mentioned before earlier, motivated for getting like you are
Hmm.
you
Yeah, yeah,
whether
he
whether
and it plays into his ideas of it playing with the idea of OJ Simpson and
right,
what would a murderer have to do to go day to day without going crazy?
right.
What are some of the mind tricks you have to do
Well,
to
right.
become human again?
That's
After
why
creating or doing something so
I
awful.
right. That's why I agree with you. I mentioned before when we were talking about the film that it was about him. There's a few different scenes here that really are important, and they could never be cut because if they were cut from the film would mean nothing. It would be a completely
Yeah.
different. It would completely different. And there's a scene there, like I go back to that scene, like where the cops asking him, "What do you mean by that?" uh,
Hmm.
and he goes, and Bill Pullman, Fred, he
Hmm.
says, "Well, I don't really remember things as they exactly happen. I
Hmm.
remember things as I want them to be." Essentially, is what he said.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
A
poorly
very key moment.
paraphrasing,
Yeah.
right? But that tells you everything you need to know from like
Hmm.
that's why it's very
Yep.
simple on the 10 from there, and whether you're zooming out and I'm being a little bit more complicated and but it's simple like something happened and then you're shifting from that event that scene to
Hmm.
the final the self and like
Hmm.
the final
Yeah. And that's why
the finality in
when
this movie
yeah,
it's dope. The finality is very doped out throughout this movie, very heavy. I'll say that you can't
yeah.
ignore it. Anyway, go on, sorry I interrupted you.
Oh yeah, I was going to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, and yeah, and that's why when his dream is sort of kind of deconstructing and tearing itself apart, that's why the mystery man comes back and he has the video camera because he's bringing reality back to him. It's not what you remember, it's what it is. And mystery man goes, her name's not Alice. If she's told you it's Alice, she lied. It's Renee. It's your wife. And he's trying to confront him with reality. He goes, okay, you're trying to escape here. You're running off trying to be somebody else, but
Right,
this is who you are. And that's why he gets into his car and runs off back on the lost highway trying to escape himself, but he can't escape.
right.
Yeah, he's on a one-way highway trip to himself.
Yeah,
And
I would
that
say
it's just a a wonderful metaphor of just the links you go to maybe escape who you really are.
yeah, I think I would kind of add to your another layer of your interpretation, like like if he's in the electric chair or whatever. I would also
Hmm.
argue that it could be simply that that is the very final moment that he had respite, like where he could have two different things
Hmm.
going on, and
Hmm.
he was directly confronted, and that electricity that was that direct contact point of reality of action, where it had to
Hmm.
come back home and be grounded.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
whatever that meant is whatever it means to
Hmm.
you, the
Yeah.
viewer, which is great about this thing. But
Yeah.
either way,
Hmm.
amazing
Yeah.
noir
I will.
film in and of
Yeah.
itself. But it has the absolute extra zip of a
Hmm.
David Lynch flick. Period. Point blank.
Absolutely. And one last thing I would like to mention, I forgot to mention it when we were talking about the actors. Robert Loggia as Dick Laurent or Mr. Eddie. He did a wonderful job. And a little backstory on him. Robert Loggia really wanted to play Frank Booth in Blue Velvet, and he went in for an audition, and they didn't get to his audition because they had already decided who they wanted. And Robert Loggia was so pin up and wanted to do this that he actually kind of exploded and yelled at them and yelled at David Lynch and was like, I wanted to, do this role, blah, blah, blah. He just exploded. And afterwards he goes, okay, I'm never going to be able to work with David Lynch again because
That's
I made an ass of myself, whatever. And so So when David Lynch thought about the role of Mr. Eddie, and he knew that there was going to be that crazy scene where he blows up on the Stellgator, he thought instantly of Robert Loggia and brought him in to play it. And, so yeah, like I said, there's those happy sort of coincidences that happen, and he always filed away like various things, and would bring it back whenever he needed those, and yeah, and they said they had a wonderful experience. Also, I wanted to say that I'd read or heard an interview where someone said, and I could be wrong on this, where they said that Balthazar Getty was kind of an ass on the filming of this. That he was nice to David Lynch's face, but you know, behind the scenes, behind David Lynch's back, he would make fun of him, and just didn't understand who Lynch was. Which I think later on, he had a more of a respect for him. But I know but yeah, there might have been a little something there, but for them, and then that kind of stuck out in my mind because everybody I've had read interviews with, saw interviews, uh, people universally love David Lynch. So that kind of a outlier kind of stuck in my head because it's like, okay, what's going on here? But yeah, I never met David Lynch, but he seemed like a wonderful human being, and the more I learned and understood about him, the more intrigued I was by him. And it's it's definitely sad that we won't have that wonderful mystery of David Lynch to explore. Um, new things with him. We will always be able to cherish what he's left us with, but that the magic kind of died a little bit when he passed.
Yeah, after his passing this month, rewatching this feels like opening a time capsule, and enjoying it. And I mentioned, off camera, I asked you, "Hey, give me another David Lynch film from." I'm abusing my reach with you, I guess, whatever. And you mentioned another one. Well, I'm not going to mention that right now, but it's still it's that beautiful space of horror of Twilight.
Hmm.
You're not quite sure reality,
Hmm.
nightmare. If you
Hmm.
want to take the dream stance from it, I think
Hmm.
you and I are a little bit more realist in that, like,
Hmm.
where I think it's just cheap and lazy to call it a dream. Not
Hmm.
that there's anything wrong with that; it can be done very
Hmm.
well, but I think that's kind of cheap to just
Yep.
do that with this kind of thing, because it's so much deeper than that, and that's why it goes
Hmm.
back to the psychological of this, the maze, where you have the
Hmm.
id, the super ego, and the ego, and they're all dancing in the dark quarters of Madison's mind, Fred Madison's mind, and
Hmm.
it's um, sadly it's cinema that we're not the kind of cinema that we're not going to see again.
Hmm.
There, there is not going to be another David Lynch, um, and that's a tragedy of living in the real world, right? So we have
Yep.
these great voices of generation. Sometimes they call them so, or
Hmm.
of surrealism. Um, David
Hmm.
Lynch is a master. What
Yep.
continues to be, and
Yep.
I hope that I'll I'm going to take a cue from the Mystery Man, and I'm going to prefer to remember things my way. um,
Absolutely. Yeah. There's
just
there
so
there is,
special.
there is a number of directors obviously inspired by David. I think the I think when David Lynch first made a splash, I think a lot of directors misunderstood what made David tick, and they just thought, just make it weird. That's the thing. But you really have to feel what you're making, and I think those directors that kind of got the wrong idea of what made a David Lynch movie work have all kind of disappeared. I think a lot of people that kind of took what David Lynch the baton that David Lynch was handing out, those that kind of took it and went with it and have taken it into wonderful new directions in their unique vision. I would and again, I haven't read the interviews where they said that they were influenced by David Lynch, but I would have to assume that they were. The director that both of us really enjoy, Robert Eggers, who recently did Nosferatu. I can't
Mm.
think that he wasn't inspired by Lynch, and he has his own unique vision that he doesn't compromise on. And I think if you're big into David Lynch and you're looking for you're sad that he's passed and you're looking for other movies to watch. If you haven't seen any Robert Eggers movies, definitely check him out. And another director I will recommend is Nicholas Winding Refn. One of his movies is Drive, but he's done a lot of different
Spectacular
movies,
movie. Yeah.
and also he has a series on Prime, Amazon Prime, which is
Right.
crazy, and also on Netflix. But yeah, he's kind of he's very he has that kind of dreamlike nightmare quality version that David Lynch does, but he does it in his own unique way. And I don't think we've ever done one of his movies on our show, but I really want to maybe get to something by him to kind of explore him. But yeah, he's a definitely and I think it's bad that maybe David passed in January, but one good thing is that this could be the year of Lynch. Maybe we focus a little bit more, like you said, on Lynch this year, and maybe artists that maybe were inspired by him.
Well, I think we're wrapping it up here, and
Yeah,
we're
I
gonna
believe
go out
so.
here and we're gonna play just a short little bit here, in memory in honor of him, and we'll do the copyright thing later on. But this is something that I won't compromise on, and I know Tom will back me up on that. And although not to riff too hard, but the highway may be lost, but the journey continues. And it just like I said, it invites you in to see other David Lynch movies,
Yep.
or shows,
Yeah.
and you will
Oh,
not be disappointed.
yeah, and before you do the music, you had picked out a quote, and I also picked out a
I
quote as
did.
well. I think we
Please.
could both do our quotes that were inspired by David Lynch.
Agree.
One my quote is from Twin Peaks, and this just kind of captures the magic and the mystery of I think that David Lynch inspires. This is from Twin Peaks. Del Cooper says this famous line in the movie or in the TV series. Um, Harry, I have no idea where this will lead us, but I have a definite feeling it will be a place both wonderful and strange.
Yeah, and I don't have the direct quote pulled up, but it was one of David Lynch's last scenes in film, on film, and I'll share that in the link below. But essentially had to do with the horizon, and when the horizon is below in the picture, it's interesting. When the horizon is above, it's interesting, and when it's in the middle, it's boring. It's boring. It's boring. Anyway, he'll do that justice. That's the best I can do to paraphrase it. But with that, I think we both equally are very well. We'll play in the next 30 seconds or so as a tribute to him, and just enjoy that silence before the music begins, and really reflect on him. And again, great auteur. We are missing him already anyway. But there we
Yeah.
go.